Chris Boucher is on another level right now, and frankly, with the production he's been putting up and the discussions from Darko Rajaković, we might see Chris Boucher start a ton of games this season, given the current circumstances. So we'll discuss that, including Scottie Barnes having his return to action, and some interesting storylines going on with some more Raptors rookies and younger prospects. So lots of stuff to sink our teeth into in this game, because the Raptors just played their second preseason game, and while there are less positives from the first one, there's still a lot of takeaways we're seeing from this new look Toronto Raptors team. We're going to break them all down in this video. But before we dive into any of that, folks, again, if you're part of the 67% of viewers that haven't hit the subscribe button just yet, you want to stay up to date with everything that's going on with this Toronto Raptors team, you're tuning into the daily news, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with everything going on with the Toronto Raptors. But we just saw the Toronto Raptors play, and yes, people that watched it all the way through, you're probably still recovering from that fourth quarter we had to witness as Toronto Raptors fans. Again, these games don't matter. They're preseason games. We're more so looking for the takeaways, how players are playing, what lineups are looking good, how things are really shaking out for the specific guys on this roster, rather than the actual wins and losses and outcomes. The guys aren't trying to win this game in terms of rotations and stuff. Players are playing hard, but it's not, like a regular season basketball game. So when we have an ugly fourth quarter like we had to the Washington Wizards, that is what it is. But there are some definitely takeaways from this game. And the first one has to be Chris Boucher, who, again, has been the topic of a lot of discussion. I mean, Josh Bloomberg came out and said in this one that Boucher has said his focus is on playing smart, not just playing hard, and he's doing both tonight. A pretty good way to ensure that he's going to be in the rotation on the court more often this season. Obviously, Chris Boucher was essentially out of the rotation for a large chunk of last year, wasn't really in the mix, and he's a guy that's just way too talented for that to be the case, right? Chris Boucher, regardless of what you think about him, regardless of his inconsistencies, he is an NBA caliber player that should be getting on the floor night in, night out. And frankly, with his redeemed relationship with Darko Rajaković, with the amount of injuries the Toronto Raptors are sustaining, we saw in the lineup tonight, right? Ochai Agbaji was the starter for the Toronto Raptors here in this one. We're getting a bunch of stuff popping up. But Ochai was the starter. We saw Mobo was the starter in the first game, especially with all the injuries and stuff coming out, but especially with the Raptors' lack of a natural power forward. And some people I've seen call on Twitter and stuff that Boucher should be the starting lineup just generally, but especially with all the injuries that are going on, I would not be shocked if we see Chris Boucher start a ton of games this season, because frankly, he's always brought the energy, he's brought the effort on defense, and yes, there's some inconsistencies there, but he's playing within himself and he is ready to go. Tonight's game had 22 points, 7 rebounds, came out on an absolute tear. He was on the court for a stretch of that fourth quarter that was really ugly basketball, so maybe you take that away from 3 turnovers in this game. But overall, I thought Chris Boucher looked very, very good out there on the basketball court, and has looked very good, very confident in terms of playing. And this is something that I don't care if you're all about the, capture the flag, the tank, all that type of stuff. Because again, I know after watching this game, especially with the outcome of the worst teams in the NBA, a lot of people are going to be jumping on the Cooper flag bandwagon right now. But if people haven't already done it entering this season. But basically, to start off this year, I'm rooting for this team to really get some W's, get some wins, to have the max of a guy like Chris Boucher. He's been on the team for years, our longest tenured player now at this point, won a championship with our squad, and we got to see him develop into the player that he is today. So to have him not only not buried on the bench, but especially with all the injuries going on, him starting in different lineups, I mean, I think our starters are going to be pretty set in stone. Definitely IQ, definitely RJ Barrett, definitely Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl. And that fourth obviously is likely to be Gradey Dick, but again, that's a 1, 2, and 3 in Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, and Immanuel Quickley. Gradey Dick is in a 4. Scottie Barnes moves up in that situation. That's kind of the lineup there now at this point. But again, if Gradey Dick is a little bit inconsistent, which he hit some shots tonight. Gradey Dick, I thought, had a solid game. 39 from the field, 2-3 from the three-point line. Missed some shots, had a couple turnovers. It's an ugly basketball game. I feel like every time we play in Washington, even when the Wizards were good, even the Raptors were good, I just never liked the vibes of a game in Washington Stadium. But basically, Boucher is more of a natural fit at that forward position than a Gradey Dick out there playing that forward spot. So definitely over Agbaji, definitely over Mobo. But again, I know a lot of people want to prioritize development. The Raptors are prioritizing development. So for the entire season, it probably doesn't make sense to give a ton of reps to Chris Boucher, at least in the starting lineup. But to start off the year, while we're competing, while we're trying to win some games, could make a ton of sense for him to get an extended run rotation, especially with the injuries that we've been seeing for this Raptors group. So don't be shocked if you see Chris Boucher in the starting lineup for stretches over the course of this season. But More interesting in the storyline that a lot of people were very excited about was Scottie Barnes' return to action, getting back in the game, getting back, and he did have a few ugly turnovers, but I thought he looked pretty solid. Again, limited run, 20 minutes, had 16 points, 2 steals, 8 rebounds, 1 assist. Was a bit frustrated with some guys out there on the court. Went 0-5 from the three-point line. Again, he's going to be shaking off some rust. The guy hasn't played since March, dealt with a hand injury and stuff. So that's all stuff that's going to come with it. But we are very hopeful that Scottie Barnes' jump shot has taken a level up. That's one thing we are all in need of if the Raptors have any hope to really surprise teams to come out into the mix for this upcoming season. So Scottie Barnes going 0-5 from the three-point line is a little bit disappointing, but other than that, I thought, and 2-4 from the free throw line, which is almost a little bit more of a red flag, but I thought his touch around the rim still looked solid. His body control still looked really good. Again, few turnovers, looked very rusty for stretches of points of this game, different possessions, but still looked like a guy that you point to if someone just came in to know the names on the jerseys. That's probably the best player in the Toronto Raptors. So that was interesting. I thought Poeltl had a good game in this one. 10 points, only 20 minutes of action. Davion Mitchell, he's had an interesting start. I like the on-ball pressure. Had 4 fouls in this one, but he's facilitating pretty well. But again, needs to be a bit more of a scoring threat to really have an impact on this team. Abaji, again, similar story to what we saw for a chunk of last season. The defense is solid, but we need more on the offensive end from Ochai Agbaji. But the more interesting players, I feel like, for this preseason, for the stuff that's happening here now at this point, is really the guys that are coming out and, fighting for roster spots, fighting for their positions out there on the team. And, Jamal Shead is a guy that I had some high praise for in the video today. A lot of people have been talking about, especially after a strong initial performance, but when 1 for 8 from the field and the 3-point shot just really has to start going down for Jamal Shead, not right now or whatever, but once he wants to be taken very seriously as, a guy in the rotation, in the mix for this Toronto Raptors team. Davion Mitchell's probably going to eclipse him, but again, Davion Mitchell didn't shoot that much better, didn't take any 3-point shots in today's game, but basically, that's the next evolution of Jamal Shead's game. He can do other stuff out there in the court. I think he should be in the rotation, even if the 3-point shot doesn't come around too much. But again, 6 points, that's going to be his next step, the next evolution of Jamal Shead's basketball game here now at this point, right? We saw Battle knock down a 3. That release is still one of the silkiest things I've ever seen in my life. Bruno Fernando, his touch around the rim is interesting. Took a few jump shots, took a 3 there in this game, which is exciting to see. He's a strong man. So don't be surprised if he ends up making that final roster spot that we have there at this point. Not a lot of time for Carlson, not a lot of time for Oliver Chomche, but Chomche, the one thing I will say about Chomche, he is raw. Like, the dude is raw at basketball. Had a couple turnovers. I don't know how many it is, just kind of off memory. Had 2 turnovers and 5 personal fouls in 8 minutes of action, which is just a crazy kind of stat line to see. But looking at him out there on the court, it just baffles me every time we see Oliver Chomche. Frankly, he is the fastest big man I have seen out there in the NBA. We've watched Pascal Siakam come up through the wings. We've seen some fast big men on the Toronto Raptors. But Chomche, that dude puts it into another gear. So it's fun watching him play. Even when it's a little bit of a mess, even when we have an ugly fourth quarter like we did, it's fun watching Chomche play basketball. Again, if we do tank, I think Chomche should get some run out there in the main roster just for entertainment value. But Mobo had a couple of shots which were solid. A nice dunk in this game as well, which is a nice positive. But his touch, similar to a lot of guys in this team, really needs some polishing now at this point. But 5 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, filled up the stat line again. Well, I saw a lot of people trashing on Mobo after this game, and I get the missed shots, the final game, basically airballing a floater around the rim. The touch does need to improve, certainly. But he's showing intangibles, which have me excited about his future, his development in the NBA. He reminds me, I know a lot of people get compared when they have unorthodox games and they have a similar skill set, but he does really remind me of a Draymond Green light. Again, has a lot of developing to go to be a guy that's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, 4-time champion and stuff, but really has, I remember Scottie had those Draymond Green comparisons, which I never thought made a ton of sense when watching Scottie Barnes play, but Mobo, just from the eye test, reminds me a ton of Draymond Green. But then we also had Roden come in and 2 of 2 from the field. DJ Carton wasn't able to make his shots. 1 of 7 from the field. 0 of 3 from the 3-point line. I mean, it was an ugly fourth. It wasn't the most encouraging. You probably heard my tone of voice. Not the most electrifying games, but again, some interesting stuff, particularly Chris Boucher, different guys in the lineup. But let me know what you guys think about this Raptors squad. Again, I'm really excited for the regular season to see how this team does when the rotations are in the mix. But I also want to say, without RJ Barrett on this roster, it's a tougher watch. It's a tougher watch of this Raptors team. But let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section down below. You guys best take this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.